Hello everyone, I'm Professor Paul Carrier, and if you are watching this video, you are interested in contracts law. What I'd like to do in this video is to cover the first class of a contracts course. And although the case book that you'd be looking at has a Florida basis, I want you to understand that the topics that are covered have a commonality legally with virtually every other state in the United States. And so much of what is covered you can treat as general rules, general exceptions, applicable basically everywhere. There are certain Florida quirks or specific areas where the Florida law differs from other jurisdictions, and I will do my best to try to explain where those are. Okay, moving on, we're in Contracts 1, Class 1 of Contracts 1 as a course. Includes 7 weeks of coverage on formation issues. The question there is, do we have a formed agreement that we can take to court to enforce? Or have we not yet reached the formation phase? And so we cover several main topics, and it takes roughly 7 weeks. After we finish the formation issues, and moving into the 8th week, this course covers the concept of breach very briefly. And there's a reason for that. Many case books do not cover breach and typically go right into the concept of contractual damages without explaining how you get from formation contract or formed contract to the right to ask for damages. And the interim step is that one of the parties to a contract breaches it, therefore justifying an award of damages. Okay, so week 8 will be covered. We'll be addressing breach, and one of the more testable and somewhat unique areas of law in breach, which we'll get to in week 8, known as anticipatory repudiation. Okay, so park that one because you'll want to pay special attention when we get to week 8. After we've covered the breach section, we finalize with 5 weeks on damages. Okay, so class 9 through class 13 of this course will be addressing the various issues of damages. What's possible, what kind of damages you might get, and as an example, the damages you would ask for if someone breaches an employment contract would probably be covered by a different legal regime, at least in part, from a complaint that there's been a breach of an agreement over the sale of goods. And so we will go into damages covering common law damages, sale of goods, uniform commercial code damages, which hopefully I'll explain over the course of this term so you understand the similarities as well as the differences. And there are various aspects of damages that we'll cover, and including, in fact, some of the requirements to claim damages. For example, foreseeability. And we'll get into that later, but even to claim damages of whatever nature, there has to be a certain level of proof on several elements, which are certainty, foreseeability, and in Florida, to claim certain damages, you have to indicate that you did at least take steps to try and avoid those damages. And if you did do that, you can claim extra damage. If you didn't do that, you're not allowed to claim those extra damages. And we'll explain that roughly around week 11 or week 12. Okay? Now, those are the main topics of Contracts 1. One of the things I want to alert students to early is how confusing contracts law can be. Contractual arrangement, a case, for example, and there is new terminology. There are concepts that for many will be extremely unfamiliar. And so it is our philosophy that you should create in your mind boxes or categories of issues. And in each box, have a label. This box is, for example, today's material, the offer. Then have elements to put into the box. what are the requirements of an offer? So you have the box of offer, and then in there you'll put, and we'll cover those in a little bit, current intent to make an offer that another party would reasonably believe he or she could accept. That goes into that first box, okay, the offer box. So there's formation issues, offer box. By week 2, we'll get to the acceptance box, and week 3 and week 4, by the way. Okay, so if you create these boxes in your mind, it will help you categorize, and so you'll know at any given time when you're dealing at a higher level with, for example, a bar exam question, you will know which area of law should I be in. Am I in formation? Does it have, is it defense to enforceability, which we will cover in contracts too? Bringing up another point. A lot of what you learn, when you see words like defenses to enforcement or conditions, as an example, those are things that we cover in contracts too. And so you'll see those words. Hopefully you'll begin to familiarize yourself with those terms as we go along. But don't let those detract from the focus that you need to have now. We're starting on formation in Contracts 1. And today, within the formation, we're going to cover the first of 4 main boxes, the offer. And so as you see other information, read other materials, you'll realize that it might not be of primary importance to know that right now. And when you see so many different things, it creates a lot of noise. And so if you understand that there is noise, but you narrow your focus as recommended, by the time you reach exam time or bar exam time, you should be able to characterize everything in its boxes so that you always feel comfortable knowing what area you'll talk about. And one last piece of advice at this point, let's say that you're sure you're in one box. I know I have to address offer. Stay in that box and use concepts in that box, like current intent, to make an offer. And don't go to the next box, acceptance, or the following box, consideration, until there is a reason. Okay? And don't use terminology that's in box 3 when your issue is dealt with in or contained in box 1. Okay? So hopefully over time this will help you categorize, and that will provide significant confidence that although you don't remember every single law, we throw a lot at you, you at least know what area of law and several intelligent things to talk about within that area, showing your logic. And that will convince, for example, your bar examiners that although your understanding is not perfect, it is certainly enough to become a lawyer. Okay? So now let's move on to, we talked about what Contracts 1 is going to cover. Let's talk about Class 1. Class 1 is going to cover the first element of contract formation. So again, formation is the issue, and we're going to have 4 boxes in formation. The first one we covered today is the offer. Okay? We like to say that formation requires 4 elements or 4 boxes. And yet, in box 1, the offer, there are 3 components. And we're using the word components so as not to mistake with elements. It's roughly the same thing, but it can be confusing when you see 2. So we start with what's in box 1. Well, formation, 4 boxes, 4 elements. Within a box, which is one of those elements, there will be components or subparts. Okay? So let's talk about those 3 components that are required for an offer. And as you read the cases, you'll understand, or you'll develop a better understanding of what's going on and how it works, how it doesn't work, okay? But right now, let's just list what those are. The first component is that the offeror making the offer has to have not a future, but a current intent for another party or other parties to enter into a bargain. If I say, I'm thinking of selling, that's not an offer. If I say, if you have $500, I will sell you my guitar. That has the current intent to sell right now, and I'm expecting an acceptance. Okay? That is a current intent. Second component of an offer. It has to be communicated. If a party does not know of an offer that's out there, he or she doesn't know its terms and can't respond to those terms. And therefore, if it's not sent to another party or it doesn't reach another party, the idea is that the offer has not yet been conveyed. And in fact, ultimately, that helps the offeror not to be bound by missives, by emails, by advertisements of sale that other parties do not know about, right? If they don't know about it, it's not an offer to those parties. And there is a case we'll cover in class that makes that point with a vengeance. Okay, so hopefully that issue will become more clear when we get to that point. The third component of the offer, which is the offer box in the formation area, is that the terms of that offer, if it is an offer, have to be sufficiently definite. If you say, I'll sell you something for a lot of money, that is far from definite enough to constitute an offer. You need to know who the parties are, right? Even an advertisement could be a potential offer if it says, offer open to the first 10 customers who purchase. And that would define, we could define who the first 10 are, okay? You have to know what the subject matter is. I'm selling a guitar, not I'm selling something. Price, you should know the price or have a mechanism to know price. But you can imagine if you have 4 or 5 pieces of information, it is probably enough to call that an offer. If you don't have enough information, it's part of money, maybe next Friday if I want to. Well, that's just ridiculous, okay? There's not nearly enough information for that to constitute an offer. If I say, I want to sell you or your brother, we've identified, my guitar, and I'll sell it to you for $500 even though it's worth $1,000. I give you or your brother the good price because I like you, and I know you're guitar aficionados. That is certainly clear enough to constitute an offer. And the sufficient terms also make up that third component required of an offer, and so that latter example would probably work, okay? The next thing we cover in Contracts 1, Class 1 are things that traditionally are not offers. Remember, we've got the components, 1, 2, and 3. But we also have 4, 5, or 6 examples of things that don't meet 1 or 2 or 3. And you should become familiar with some of these examples so that you recognize them when you see them. First, preliminary negotiations. I'm thinking of selling my guitar. What do you think a good price would be? That is not an offer. That's an invitation to enter into negotiations or perhaps reach a bargain, but not an offer yet. You can't say, I accept. You have to go further and say, how much? I'm thinking $500. Will you accept it? Okay, so preliminary negotiations, not yet an offer. Okay? A good example is typically advertisements. An advertisement that says, buy one tire, get one free for things in stock. Come on in, we have the best prices in town. That's an ad that probably is not sufficient enough in those components, the required components, to constitute an offer. But beware, and this is a good question to be asked. Is there an advertisement with enough information to make it an offer? What if I said, as a different example, I will sell 10 fur coats at $100 per coat, valued $1,000, but I'll sell 100 coats to the, or no, I'm sorry, forgive me, 10 coats, these fur coats made out of sable, to the first 10 customers who ask for it on Saturday morning. I've defined the what, I've defined the quantity, I've defined the price, I've defined the persons to whom I made the offer. The first 10 people to walk in and ask for the deal. So there's an example of an advertisement that is definite enough to constitute an offer. Now, another thing that would not constitute an offer, statements of opinion or intention. I am a doctor and I think that I'll fix your problem. You'll never have heartburn again after my surgery. What if you get some heartburn after that? Can you sue me because I breached my promise? Did I offer in a way that makes a binding agreement? Or am I just advertising a little bit? I'm a good doctor. I'm a good mechanic. Now, if it's specific enough, right, then perhaps you have an offer that can be accepted and can lead to damages. If I said, for example, you've lost use of your hand, I promise you when I'm done, you will have 50% or better mobility. You, 50% or better. Me, that might be an offer because I've made not a statement of belief, not a statement of opinion, not a statement of my intention. I've given you specifics of what I am going to do. That might be enough to constitute an offer. Another thing is puffing. Puffing like advertisements. If somebody says, this is the best car you'll ever own, this is the last suit you'll ever need to own, those are sales phraseology, and they are not offers. Okay, again, they fall short of having either a binding intent or enough information for there to be some standard that can be judged when the other party on the other side is arguing breach. Another thing that's not an offer, typically, social contracts. If someone invites me to their wedding and asks for an RSVP, and I fail to RSVP, or no, forgive me, let's say I agree, I'm going. If I don't go, can that group sue me for the dinner that I cost them? And the answer is typically no. There was no intent to be bound by that. People need a head count, but they don't expect that you're going to be bound. Could that change? Possibly. What if the invitation said, we must have a definite head count. If you're not coming, but you say you're coming, you've got to pay. That probably might be an offer, although the best way to handle that is not through this area of law. Just require a deposit that's non-refundable. If you want to come, RSVP and send me the check for $100 for the meal. Okay? So, but social contracts on occasion have come up, and those things are typically not offers. Okay? If you're looking at the slides now, you'll see that I've tried to cover each issue per slide on a cumulative basis. And in fact, if you look at the final product, the last slide, this is a template of what we cover in Class 1. We'll cover many more things that you need to know, but this is a good start, and it might help you understand what you're doing if you watch this video before you do the reading. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in class.